Amy, you want me to go ahead?
Sure, absolutely. I'll get ready to do it, so that's perfect.
Okay, I will call the joint session of Franklin City Council with the school board and school administration to order.
And I will call the meeting to order as well for the Franklin City School Board and School Administration. So I will say welcome, everyone. We are down a few players tonight. We had a couple of board members that had some conflicts and were not able to be here last minute. That came up. So Mr. McCreary is not with us tonight. Ms. Smith is not with us tonight, and Dr. Shelton is not with us tonight. Dr. Sterling is joining us remotely, as is Mr. Ryder as well. So they are both on the big screen on Zoom with us. So hello, Dr. Sterling, and hello, Mr. Ryder.
And I will just.
Good evening.
Mr. Kitchen had to work and was not able to.
And that was one of our conflicts as well. So. All right. Dr. Sterling and Mr. Ryder, if you want to take the lead.
All right. Good evening, City Council and Board of Education. It's good to see you all again. We have 3 presentations tonight for our joint session. I will be handling the first one. Kyle Teague will handle the second one, and then I'll come back again for the third one. They're fairly brief. So without further ado, Tammy, we will begin with the joint session. The slide that's up there. Okay. So everybody knows that the school division is a component unit of the city, and that the city council and the school board, we meet 2 or 3 times a year to decide upon the allocation for the upcoming school year. So what happened, what we did for our teachers in fiscal year 2021, we took a bunch of actions to stem what was kind of a staffing problem at that time even. We increased drivers, teacher assistants, we raised their wages, we increased the custodians, the secretaries, and the teachers' salary schedule we put on par with Southampton. And despite all these measures, Franklin City continues to have staffing shortages, and at times they have reached crisis levels in this school year. So the list of certified teachers, since May, we had about 83, and we've seen a steady decline down to about 70. So we're about 16% of our teaching workforce is not here. In the middle of the school year, in the middle of the middle school, had to close down for a week in September because we didn't have enough teachers. All the kids had to do exactly what we're trying not to do, and they had to go home and try to learn virtual, and that's just what we're trying not to do. Most of the teachers have no planning periods because they're covering for vacancies. And of course, when you have fewer teachers, you're going to have to increase the class size. So we've increased the class size from around 15 and 16 from the year before to about 25 to 27. And every single principal and assistant principal we have are at least teaching at least one class. They have to actually go in and cover for teachers that are not showing up. This slide really kind of tells, the other slide, this slide here, oh, I'm sorry. This slide here, really, brings it home as to where are they going? It would be one thing if all these teachers were just retiring, but there they are. We have we transfer sick days, and we have reference checks, and we try to find out as best we can, where are these people going? So of the night, we've actually lost 19 teachers, but we replaced 3 of them. So we're down to net 13. So 6 of them went to Suffolk. 5 went to Southampton. 1 went to Chesapeake. 3 were hired by other divisions, but we just don't know which division they went to. 3 of them actually retired, and 1 left the profession. So, your cause and effect, I mean, the people going to Suffolk and Chesapeake, obviously we know that their salary schedules are much different from ours. So, what we've done, what we have attempted to do with our CARES money, is we've tried to pay out retention stipends to people twice a year in December and in May or June. And rather than increasing their salary schedule, we thought that we could maybe pay these out twice a year so we can at least get people in for at least 6 months. And hopefully they would be looking forward to that. So there's, so that's all being paid for out of the ESSER 3 grant, which was just approved. Because these salary schedules are so large, I have to put them on 2 screens. So just to give you a quick idea, anybody can have this presentation. It's a public record, but here are the salary schedules on the next slide for Suffolk, Southampton, and Isle of Wight in blue. Suffolk, we did have 2 years there. So you can see with the years of experience, there's some, $4,000 and $5,000 differences between ours and theirs, and a couple thousand to $6,000 on Isle of Wight. And then on the next screen, it goes up, and ours caps at 39, Suffolk's caps at 34, and so does coincidentally Isle of Wight. So since we're already paying more than Southampton, on the next slide, I'm going to remove Southampton. And what we did was we put the number of teachers in and told the computer to calculate, what is the cost difference between us and Suffolk? Then we came up with that figure, and then we realized, man, that's a big figure. That's a big number. If everybody just went to their scale as it is. So what we did was we capped it at step 30. So after step 30, if we went to Suffolk's scale, at step 30, we're going to cap it at 70,000. Same thing with Isle of Wight. So I had, all kinds of slides that showed all these calculations, but then we figured, let's just get to the bottom line. So in version 1, if we took today's teacher count and the schedules exactly as they are, we would have a $647,000 annual increase in wages going out to teachers, and 523 if we adopted the Isle of Wight schedule. Version 2, we figured, well, that's really high. So in version 2, we capped it. So the today's teacher count, when we up at those upper levels there, we capped that at 70,000 because Suffolk's just kept going up and up and up until about $78,000. So we just capped it at 70. So you can see that saved about $100,000. That's fine. And then versions 3 and 4, I put in the missing teachers. So and if you just adopt the schedules as they are, and we add about, I think it was 12 or 13 teachers, going to Suffolk is like a $710,000 increase annually. But if you cap it at 70,000, version 4 is about a $600,000 increase, about $500,000 if we went to the Isle of Wight salary schedule. So what this illustration up to this point is just a simple comparison to our neighboring districts, divisions, and where the teachers are going and why they're going. So that is the presentation or the situation with the teachers. The next slide is just something that we kind of switch gears here because this all rolls up until the 3 slides from now, it all makes sense. But the coronavirus, they came up with another stream of funding for school divisions, and it's to pay for HVAC upgrades. And the problem with this particular grant is it's a federal funded grant from ESSER or CARES money, but the local division has to match at 100%. And Franklin City's is $200,000. So if we are to receive that 200, we have to pledge 200 of local funds. So what we did was we figured out on the next slide, what is it? It's very narrowly defined. Kyle Teague can even speak to this better than I, but it's a very narrowly defined grant. It can only be used for specific HVAC things. So what we did was we asked them would replacing the cooling tower at SP Morton, would that be an approved, that would be an expense, an allowable expense? And they said, yes. And what about air purifiers for the schools? You know, it sucks it in, it pushes it through the MERV filters and UV light and cleans the air. And so, yeah, they said, yeah, that's it. So this is how we would pay for that grant if we were able to match it with local funds. On the next slide is just two pictures. The picture on the left is the cooling tower at SP Morton, right outside your door there. And the picture on the right is about a refrigerator size. That's just one unit. And we'd be purchasing like 14 of those and putting them, dispersing them throughout the schools. So, you know, all things equal, the school division's priorities for fiscal year 2023, you know, is number one, we're rescinding the rollover request for the $577,000. We have identified that we are going to have vacancy savings this year. And at the next board meeting on December 16th, I'm bringing to our board the budget amendment to move some of those dollars around so we can cover that. Another priority is a one-time increase of $200,000 next year in order for us to receive that federal grant for the HVAC stuff. Another priority is an annual allocation to stem the tide of teacher resignations. Do something, because something over and above what we're doing with the CARES money is going to be needed. And so, and then because we have a, you know, we have a 39-month window here with this CARES, this ESSER 3 funding that you guys are going to have your public hearing on Monday. We ask that any unreserved fund balance that accumulates to the school division stay in the school division so that we can cover the float. So we had that October cash flow problem, and we're going to be spending a lot of ESSER money, and there is going to become times where that cash is going to it's going to go down. We have our tools in place, by the way, that notifies the city weeks or even a month in advance, and it worked perfect. It worked this week, as a matter of fact. We foresaw exactly what was going to happen on December 15th, and you know, I notified Amanda and the treasurer or the controller, and you know, worked it out perfectly fine. So this slide 14 here are the priorities for the school division for fiscal year 2023. So does anybody have any questions on any of these slides?
Jeff, I just need to clarify, this is Amanda. I have the budget amendment for the 577,200 on the agenda for Monday night. So are you saying that the school division is not asking for those funds and they'll remain with the city? Because our understanding was those were to pay for the bathroom renovations that you completed. I just want to clear that for the record. The agenda's going out to council, so we can just amend it to remove that item if that's the case.
Yes, we were. Somehow the screen went blank. Anyway, I know you're all there. Yes, we had decided that we really need to keep that as unreserved fund balance in order to fund these federal dollars going out the door. So if we were to, you know, expend those, that would just leave us too vulnerable. And so we've, you know, reconsidered, and we're reallocating some of the teacher vacancy money to cover that this year.
Yeah, this is Frank. The bulk of that 577 was for the bathroom to be repaired.
Yes.
The bathrooms are repaired, so you had vacancy savings of upwards of 577,200.
Two things. One, they weren't that high. I was able to also utilize CARES funding, some CARES funding, to take a chunk out of that, because the bathrooms, they did qualify for some of the stream 1. We have 5 streams coming in. So I took some of the stream 1 money and put the bathroom project, some of the cost of the bathroom project to that grant.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I thought we asked the question whether that CARES money would qualify for the bathrooms, and I think we were told no. I may be
Yeah,
wrong.
the CARES money does, the bathrooms will qualify for the bathroom up refurbishments.
But council asked the question at that point in time, when we were gonna carry over the 577 for a longer period of time. We asked the question, doesn't some of this bathroom renovations fall under the CARES? And we were told no. I'm pretty sure. You're right. So now I find it curious that it did qualify, which is fine. I mean,
Yeah. And and what you'll see in the third presentation tonight is the CARES, the fifth CARES grant, where we have actually put, because we did, you remember they kind of changed the rules a little bit, as this thing unfolded. And we found out, yeah, it does. But we had already spoken for the money, most of the money of that grant. But in this next one, since we were able to use some of these dollars to pay for the SP Morton bathrooms, we put the high school and the middle school into the stream 5.
Okay, so Jeff, I'm just, and Dr. Sterling, I'll be taking off that budget amendment for Monday night. So that 577 will be reflected as remaining with the city in your.
You're trading 577 for 200?
Well, and that was the follow-up question, if I may. So is the 200 request for FY 22 or FY 23?
23.
23.
And Ms. Jared, I will send you a formal memo documenting that. Thank you. That
Great.
retention.
Yes. Thank you, and I'll forward it to council in their Friday update.
Yes, ma'am.
what is your total vacancies? I see your 16 number or 13 number. My math is different than yours. Your 13 number for faculty. What is it for total school personnel? How short are you?
Well, those are just the certified staff.
But you alluded to the fact that you were at a critical.
Well, I think we have Dr. Wight there, but and she should be able to address that. However, you have the 13, 14, really almost 17 vacancies at the certified level. Then you also have about 3 vacancies at the central office level. We are in the process of hiring 2 additional admin for JP King this month, which will take our vacancy numbers down. So I'm just going to say approximately 20 vacancies throughout the division.
Total division, thank you. That includes all personnel. I'm not talking about just teachers and administrators.
Yes, sir. That's considering all personnel, your central office personnel and your certified staff and your custodians, your nutrition, all staff, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Leonard Johnson, Ward 4. I have a question about the grant on page 12. And one question is basically where's the matching funds coming from? And secondly, what type of grant is it per se?
Okay. Yes, that's actually a request for next year. It's federal dollars that are available to us with 100% matching string attached. So that's just a request. Now, we've actually applied for the grant because it had a deadline and we've been approved for the grant. But if we can't come up with the local funds, we just don't buy the cooling tower replacement and all those filtering units. So that is something that has to come from local funds. And it's a request for next year.
And when you say local funds, is that a different segment that pool of money would be pulled from, or how does that work?
Well, we got a 4 million, 4.8 million is our allocation for last year and the year before. So it would have to be 500,000 or 5 million. 4.8 would have to go to 5 million. Just for that one project.
It would be an increase to our request from the city for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
What does this rescind 577,000? What does that mean? Where's that money go?
It would go in your unrestricted fund balance
In the school or the city?
for the city. So the way it works in Virginia, when the schools end their fiscal year, we give them the $4.8 million is what they were allocated in the current fiscal year. Whatever they don't spend reverts back to the city unless you approve it as carryover for them, which council takes on a case-by-case basis each year after the audit's complete. So in this case, they knew due to supply chain delays that the bathroom project wouldn't be completed in the previous fiscal year. And so they had indicated to us that they would need this money to pay for the bathroom renovations, and had requested that as their carryover. We had not approved it yet officially because of the audit not being complete. So now that it has been complete and received, it was placed on the agenda for Monday evening. And what they're saying now is that they don't need it for that project. So it would be shown on our financial statements as added to city council's unrestricted fund balance.
But you can't repeat it.
Okay.
What is the gross increase? Budget is being asked for above what we did last
I don't think we've seen that.
I don't think we've seen that number yet.
Right now, we aren't proposing an amount. We're looking at what the priorities are for the upcoming year. And the two right now that we're looking at are the funds associated with this grant and the teacher salary increases for the purpose of teacher retention. So right now, those are the two that we're looking at. We have not, as far as the salaries that were mentioned, we have not pinpointed which one the school division is focused on going with. In discussions in the finance committee meeting, it was 4 versions on page 10 that were presented. When you're looking at the total bucket, I think from the standpoint of, as we discussed in the finance meeting, and Mr. Holt, please correct me if I'm wrong. We've got 2 options. 1 and 2 are looking at just based upon the teachers that we have in place right now. It does not take into account coverage of those salaries associated with the vacancies we have as of right now. Of course, the intention is that we are hoping all positions will be filled. We know that there's always some inflow and outflow in those teacher positions because you have teachers that retire. You're going to have some that will retire throughout the year. It just always happens. But the intention is to be fully staffed. So being good stewards, we have to look more towards that fully staffed of version 3 and version 4 versus version 1 and version 2. Suffolk, I mean, we're losing most of our teachers to Suffolk, but I think we decided that's too big of a jump to look at matching to Suffolk's scale. Isle of Wight is a little bit easier to come closer to. So I think we're looking at I think we're leaning more towards version 4 at the Isle of Wight scale. But we've not hammered that down completely yet. And we're having technical.
That number's 495, 291, so roughly $500,000 plus the 200. What are you getting from the state? Is the state doing anything on
Well,
that?
right now, and that's one of the reasons why we've not settled on this, because one of the things the governor is proposing right now is a 10% salary increase,
Right.
but it's got to have a local match. They're
Of course it
mandating a
does, because
local
it's
match.
unfunded
Of course.
mandate. That's what they do every time.
Right, that's what they do every time, and, you know, every opportunity that we have to talk with the legislators, those are things that we push back on, is unfunded mandates. Because, and even if they fund it for a year, it ends up becoming an unfunded mandate down the line.
That's what they've done previously.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll
so-
continue to do.
You know, and that's something that we have to, we're waiting on some more information on what that's gonna look like, and of course, if the governor puts it in the budget, it doesn't mean it's gonna be approved either. Because the last cycle, when they went through and were looking at, salary increases, it went well past when the normal budget was approved before there was ever even any decision on it. So right now, we don't know if that's gonna come down the pipe and become part of the budget, or if it's gonna get dropped through the budget process at the state level. Now, if it does come back that it is part of the budget, the state's budget, yes, that will help towards the cost of whatever the salaries are gonna be, but it won't fully fund it, and we know that.
What is your ADM as of end of October? End of November, whatever.
Jeff, what's the most recent ADM number that we have?
I believe it was 938.
938?
938, so that's a drop of 30 from year end last year, 31. I think it was 969.
Roughly.
Went from 1,021 to 969, now to 938.
And for those that don't remember that, the state doesn't pay based off of our actual enrollment. They pay off of our daily average membership, which is how many students show up for class every single day. So that we can have enrollment of, say, 1,000, but if we've got 30 kids a day that are out on average every day, then we're only paid at 970 based off of 970 students.
How about the ones that are staying at home, doing homeschool?
Homeschooling, if they're actually a homeschooled student,
Yes.
they are not part of our ADM. They're not part of our enrollment if they're a homeschool student.
No, well, exactly. What I mean is, basically, they are enrolled here, but they're staying at
A
home.
virtual student.
Virtual.
So those students right now would be doing classes through Virtual Virginia. Dr. Sterling or Mr. Ryder, do you have a number of, on the students that are doing Virtual Virginia? Or are all of those being counted as homeschool?
No, we don't have those numbers. That would be something that I could get from the high school. But Virtual Virginia is offered to our children each semester. We don't have a virtual learning platform for students to stay at home and do virtual learning. We voted to do all in-person instruction this year. And because of that, a lot of our students' parents did opt. We did have an increase of requests for students to be homeschooled this year that did play a part with our decreased enrollment.
So those are not counted in our ADM, correct? If they're not
That-
here for class.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That is correct. And the state is tracking this now, City Council. There are over 44,000 students that have left the grid to either go to private, homeschool, or some online virtual platform. So we just were briefed with VDOE, with Dr. Lane, that there is a loss of students throughout Virginia coming to public education.
I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was Fairfax County, over the last year has lost 10,000 students, just in that one county alone.
That's correct.
Number of students across each grade level has dropped over the last year significantly, with one exception, and that's preschool. Preschool has actually increased by like 18,000 students over the last year. And I think one thing that has made that increase, of course, is that now part of the governor's push was mandatory, requiring all schools provide preschool as part of their curriculum. So there's lots of schools that hadn't provided that before that now have that. So there's more spots open throughout the state.
And may I ask one more thing, please?
Sure.
We just had a meeting with BDOE today about accreditation, and I know that's very important to the city and it's very important to us. But our accreditation is at stake because of we're not able to attract teachers in math and science, and that is one of our in special ed, and all of our target areas to raise our scores statewide is math, science, and special ed. And we will be briefing the city shortly, probably in January or no later than February, on how not having a certified teacher in the classroom has affected our students for the last 3 years. And most likely, we will be not even accredited with condition next year.
I have a question about this slide that we're on right now. This is Carrie Johnson at large. Looking at, let's say, the Isle of Wight column, version 2 versus version 4, I want to make sure that I understand that correctly. So version 2 is if we were paying at the Isle of Wight scale, capped at 70, just to the certified teachers that we currently have, versus version 4, which would be if we had all of the missing teachers that we need, we would be paying the $495. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So my rough math, that's about $50,000. And if I look back on page 5, where we're talking about the missing people, or the people that we've lost that I guess we still need, I actually get that we still need 16 instead of 13. But I was wondering how 16 salaries can only be $50,000. That number seemed off to me.
It's the difference. of Isle of Wight.
That's the difference.
Right, but if we were at a full teacher count, it would seem to me that we would need more than $50,000 or $51,000 to cover those 16 vacancies.
Well, the difference would be $3,000 to $4,000 for each.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
We would-
yes, Robert, that's correct. That's the difference. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I got you now. So are you anticipating, like, did you do like somewhere in the middle of the scale, or anticipating bringing in brand new teachers, or?
I
seasonal
placed him on step 3
on step
because
three?
I just got to, you got to pick one.
Gotcha.
I just picked one.
Okay,
And step 3, figuring that probably a good portion of them would be more towards that new right out of college, just got my certification.
right,
More would be leaning towards that end of the scale than a 10-year teacher, because we know a lot of the teachers that have been in a spot for, once they hit past that 3 and 4 year mark, they don't move as quickly
right,
from one division to the next.
right.
So it's usually when they're earlier in their career is when you see a lot of that movement.
Yeah,
So
trying to
that-
find their place.
Right, that's where they went and picked that step 3.
Okay. But I did, so is it, do we need 13 or do we need 16?
Well,
Like on page 5?
we lost 16, but we hired 3.
Okay, it says we lost 19.
Says we lost 19.
Yeah, it was typographical error.
Okay. Thank you.
The mayor and I have talked many times about this teacher increase that comes out every year, and this week is a perfect example. The governor talks about a 10% increase for teacher pay, and he takes a big bite for that. But what he doesn't say is, the first year, I'm putting in the budget that the state will kick in 2.5% if the locality kicks in 2.5%. Then we go to the second year and the same thing. The state will give you 2.5% if you kick in 2.5% at your level. But after 2 years, nothing.
You got it
So
all.
if we give a teacher a raise, we're obligated not only for the first year or two, we can afford that. But after the first 2 years, we don't get anything from the state, so we have to pay that whole thing. So that's where the real rub comes in. They don't give you down the road like we have to budget for. They only give you part of it.
That's right.
And again, looking at new teachers coming in basically to hire, let's just say a scenario, say some veteran teachers come. It would normally change the scenario of everything, I think.
Absolutely. And one thing that plays into that as well that you have to consider, you know, if you look back at our current scale, on page 9, there's a column that shows you how many teachers we have on each step. So, for instance, we've got 8 teachers with 39 or more years experience. The likelihood is that sometime in the next few years, we're going to start seeing those retire. So, you know, when we lose someone with us that's getting paid, let's say, we'll just say at that $61,000 range, is it likely that we're going to bring somebody in at that exact same salary filling that spot? No, we're not. So even if we have one leave in a year and we bring somebody in that's at a step 10, at a step 10, which we don't have that one up here because we didn't have anyone at that, but a step, say step 9, that's $45,000. So you're looking at $15,000-$16,000 difference. So that helps mitigate some of that if we have someone that does leave, bringing someone in at a lower level.
Right.
And that's a huge concern too with retention, because we've got so many at that higher step, at that 39 plus years experience. And when you do the math and, you know, how else did they have to be to graduate with a degree and add 40 on top of that? They're right there where they're knocking on the door of retirement. And that 8 is a lot to have sitting in that one step at one time.
Does the school board and the school system do an exit interview for teachers that leave?
Everybody.
We do.
What does that tell us? Why are they?
If they're being honest in their exit interviews, salaries and other divisions.
How about if they're being dishonest? What do they tell? Caveat is, I'll figure that out.
Yeah, and honestly, unless they're having those conversations on the side with us, I've had a couple that have left because of climate in the past within the buildings, not feeling supported within the buildings. I'm not hearing that now, from those that I talk to.
Who does the exit?
HR.
And it's all documented, you all get a report.
We don't get the report, but we do get briefed on it. We don't actually see the report. And that is information that we ask quite regularly when there is a resignation, to the point that now on our personnel agendas, if someone leaves, that reason is listed that they provide.
I've seen this so many times, it's almost become the norm. But we will recruit a teacher right out of college. We'll hire them to teach in this school. And they decide they don't want to live in a small town, so they live in Suffolk. They love the job in this school because these kids need them and they understand that and they know how to relate to them. But after about 5 years, they realize, hey, there's a school in Suffolk 2 blocks from where I live that I can get $4,000 or $5,000 more and not drive 30 minutes to Franklin. So they leave for that reason, many times. Not all of them, but many of them.
I've heard it, I've heard a couple that have personally told me, they've left because they're overburdened, because they're having to take their planning period to teach another class because we're strapped for teachers.
Okay.
So I've heard that too.
How about the program that we started, we all started several years ago to bring potential teachers in and train them up and all of that?
And the new teacher academy,
Yeah.
those classes actually started a year ago. And those are, what we looked at is those that are within the division that are not certified teachers. So like our teachers' aides are a great example. And we actually have one that has become a certified teacher, became a certified teacher this year. And so she's in a classroom now on her own. And we've got several more that are part of that program right now. But taking them from where they've got an associate's degree to where they've got that bachelor's to get, to be able to attain that certification, it unfortunately doesn't happen overnight. So that takes at least a couple of years. But we've got several that are still part of that program.
I know when I visited the high school, and you've got a lot of teachers that were identified as really good teachers coming from a switcher program. Is that true? Phil?
From a career switcher program or from the grow your own, like the one?
No,
from the TA?
career switch.
Yes, we have quite a few. I hate to put a number on it, but
Yeah.
5 or 6.
But I know they got, when we were doing the walk with the governor's wife, there were several.
2 JROTC teachers, our culinary arts teacher. It happens more frequently for us in the CTE programs. They go from the industry into the teaching part of it. Some of it's because of more regular hours, or they just want to teach. A lot of them take pay cuts to do it.
We have a science teacher.
Yes, we have a science teacher we had a science teacher that was a former engineer that left us to go to Chesapeake for more money. And then we have we currently have a science teacher who's a medical doctor that teaches the first 2 blocks with us. And then he keeps his practice only because, I don't want to speak for him, but financially, he wants to teach, but that's a huge jump to go from a medical doctor's salary to a high school teacher's salary. So he can't afford to do it all together yet.
Do we have a percentage of teacher shortage from the other surrounding areas relative to, what percentage are we down?
Compared to like a Southampton or something. We do not have those numbers. We have to probably do some digging to find out how much they are down. And that would probably require us to actually reach out to those divisions to gather those numbers, because sometimes they may have lost a position and they may have decided that they're not going to fill the position. So that's not even counted as a need for them anymore. So that would have to be numbers that would come straight from the division.
So the numbers we're looking at, teachers we're short is not necessarily any worse or better than anyone else as far as we know.
No, we know across the state there is a need, a critical shortage. But what it is from one division to the next, we don't know.
My guess is everybody would be about the same that we're in.
So
That would be my guess.
I would think so.
And it's to the point now that, an example, we have a salary scale. Every school division has a salary scale. And that's what we pay. Wherever you fall with your number of years of service, that's where you stick on that scale. And we're to the point now where we're finding that there are divisions that are going off of their scale to keep a teacher if they actually get hired on by another division, or to attract a teacher to them that's going to go somewhere else. And you know, we don't have a pool of dollars to negotiate a salary on, nor is it fair to those that are already here and have stuck it out for years either.
We're basing our scenario on salary, and the salary may not be the total problem.
It may not be. One of the issues that we have heard is cost of benefits, cost of insurance. As you well know, the cost of what the insurance is based off of claims from the insurance company. And when you have such a small division, one large claim impacts a whole lot more than if it's spread out over more bodies.
We have the same phenomenon. within
Yep.
your testimony. All right, I think let's move along now. Sorry for the question. I think it's germane to the discussion.
All right, Mr. Ryder, Dr. Sterling, are you ready to move on?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Thank
The
you.
next presentation will be given by Mr. Teague. It is the long-awaited capital improvement plan.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Of course, my name is Kyle Teague. I'm the Director of Operations and Facilities here at Franklin City Public Schools. Today, we're going to talk about some of the capital improvement priorities that are being spotted and attempted to be budgeted for in the near future, hopefully. So these are the preliminary budgetary numbers. A lot of these are going to be projects that have to, according to Virginia procurement law, go out to bid. But the maximum expected budgetary amounts are what we allotted for here in this outline of our capital improvement plan. So moving along, we have our first data set, which is for Franklin High School. This is a full breakdown of all the potential projects over the next several fiscal years. The total for Franklin High School is sitting at a projected $12,320,000, $325,000. So close to 13.3. So that's the budgetary needs for Franklin High School. We'll go through all the projects individually in later slides. This is SP Morton's preliminary capital improvement plan budget, and that sits at $11,770,000. And finally, JP King sitting at $10,815,000. Right there between all of the three schools, you're looking at about 34 million total. To get into some of these individual projects, what they're for and why those dollar amounts make sense, we're talking about massive overhauls of the facilities that are long overdue, such as this electrical modernization project here. All of the FCPS facilities are on 480, 277 volt wiring. This is not conducive to a modern educational facility. Most of these circuits are at capacity. You can't so much as plug in a TV in these classrooms without tripping a breaker. These electrical systems were not designed for this kind of technology that we use in modern academic environments. It just wasn't designed for that. These are light duty commercial and industrial wiring grids, panels, and as most of you can imagine, they're quite aged. If you find yourself bored later this evening, I'll be happy to show you. HVAC modernization. Another thing that we came up against, as Mr. Ryder talked about in the HVAC grant that he alluded to, was we do not have traditional ductwork or HVAC units here at any of our schools. Most of them are PTAC units, which you'll notice if you walk around one of our buildings, they sit in the wall. They have no ductwork. They're all individually wired. They're all individually controlled. Because of this, it's very hard to get a consistent environment or control of the environment in these facilities. Most of the non-centralized air conditioning systems, as it says here, are well past their recommended service life. And with regular maintenance, these new systems could add 15 to 25 more years of potential service life to the building. Roof repairs and replacements. This is high up on the list of priorities. A watertight space is absolutely necessary. So I don't feel I have to go too deep into that. We all don't want leaky roofs, do we? Structural assessments for each building, and as well as repairs such as pointing up brickwork, repairing the foundations. Those foundations have a 100-year service life, and that's generally it. That's what any manufacturer of cement, concrete construction, that's what they'll tell you. And a lot of these buildings are at that mark. And so we need to have structural assessments done at these facilities in order to make sure that the structure is still holding. Step cracks and other signs of structural damage are present. And so this would take quite a fairly large undertaking to repair all of these deferred maintenance items. So that's the structural assessments there. Redesigning the landscape at Franklin High School as one of our most trafficked facilities and certainly one of our most popular destinations. It is felt that it would be appropriate to go ahead and redesign for security, pest control, and aesthetic purposes in mind. So that's fairly straightforward. Next slide, please. Mini split kitchen HVAC units. These are small, self-contained air conditioning units that can be placed in a highly trafficked area such as a kitchen. They currently do not have air conditioning registers or anything in any of our kitchens, so it creates a fairly strenuous work environment for our food service staff. So it is my recommendation that we try to pursue this particular project in order to alleviate some of those problems. The auditorium at Franklin High School, doing a little bit of a renovation there in order to take care of some of the worn equipment. The seating in the auditorium, as well as many of the surfaces, are well past their useful service life. So this would be able to provide an improved venue for all the events that Franklin High School is hosting and continues to host more of. Additionally, replacing all the mini blinds in Franklin High School. Some of them are quite old, and that simply needs to be done. Looking at about $30,000 for that. Right here, security doors at the schools. Just about every facility has doors that are mostly original to the buildings. So they are quite aged. They have been refitted time and time again with different locks, hardware, hinges, just about everything you can imagine. And many of them are unable to continue their service life because of this. They've been retrofitted 40 times for different hardware that you can't get anymore. In order to address that problem, we would have to go through and completely change out all of the security doors throughout our facilities. Kitchen upgrades at each school. This is something that was discussed with the supervisor of nutrition. Many of these facilities are not retrofitted to handle the new equipment they're using. Most of these kitchens were designed around deep fryers and things like that. That equipment is gone, but a lot of the remnants and the layout considerations are still in place. In order to allow for this new equipment and the new procedures to be more safe and effective, this would help to address that particular issue. Sidewalk repair, that needs to take place at mostly Franklin High School and S.P. Morton Elementary. We always react to taking care of any potential tripping hazards. We usually either grind it down or fill it in where we can, but those have to be addressed. Window repairs for S.P. Morton here. A lot of the failing trim, seals, and frames throughout the building are an issue. And in the interest of keeping the building watertight, this would have to be pursued as well. Flooring replacements. A lot of the flooring surfaces throughout the entire district are uneven due to structural failings, and various flooring materials are well past their recommended service life. Parking lot repairs and repaving. At this point, a lot of our asphalt is fully oxidized. That means it has that light gray color. You can't paint it, you can't seal it, you can't do anything with it. All it's gonna do is start breaking up. The projected cost of that is about 190,000. Greenhouse restoration, there's a greenhouse at Franklin High School. In order to refurbish it and get that up and running again, that is a capital project that is being considered. The Franklin High School breezeway and headers. This is a issue over at Franklin High School where we have wooden breezeways that are currently decaying. In order to address that, it would be beneficial to us to go ahead and reinstall the breezeways and also redo the headers around the same time to get a consistent look around the building. IT central storage. This is a project being considered so that the IT department can have a centralized location to store the equipment it uses to serve the district. Currently, there is no central IT storage and nowhere for them to keep that equipment. It's being moved from school to school. And of course, when you're dealing with computers, you want to have them somewhere where you can catalog them, track them. And so a centralized location will help in that endeavor. SV Morton, redesigning the playground equipment. The current playground equipment is aged and well past its useful service life. A lot of the equipment has missing pieces that can no longer be procured. It's simply too old. You can't find it anymore. Right, and that is the various list of items on the capital improvement agenda. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Why would you spend $34 million on 3 old buildings when you have a brand new one for 25 million?
That is a fantastic question.
You can't get a new one for 25.
You should get one for 34 million.
No.
See, that is a very good question, and I myself asked the same question.
And you were right, for 25, 30 million, we could,
We just went through this whole thing on the courthouse.
yep, we could.
This is not strange territory. You got this planned out for about 4 years,
Up till 2027.
So next 5.
5 years. It'll take you 5 years to get what you want, and you're still gonna have.
Same
50 old
buildings.
Buildings,
That's right.
and you're gonna continuously need upgrading. I don't see a common sense approach to this at all.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I misunderstood, but you said the structural assessment, you were talking about the concrete.
Mhm.
You said it was ready to be 100 years.
That's right. Modern foundations, the way they're poured, floated foundations.
So
100-year
we're
service.
nowhere near 100 years on these schools. Why are they cracking?
Well, for a lot of reasons, the maximum service life recommended is 100 years. Franklin has a unique water table and soil disposition. It's one of the reasons why it floods here. The water table is very high, and the soil and undercurrents shift quite a bit. This causes foundation settling issues in a lot of the buildings throughout the city. If you were to look at a lot of, just pick a building, any building, and I'll be able to point to the various step cracks and problems that it has because the foundation has shifted so. Even City Hall, you can see, it was built in 2004, you can see some of the shifting from the building settling.
Well, I could be mistaken. I don't have the greatest memory, but I don't recall this area flooding during the flood. How can I be mistaken? But I don't.
What he's referring to is called shrink swell soils. So we have them throughout the city. There's certain areas where it's more prevalent than others. There's a shrink swell test that people have to.
But the
get when
only
they
one
go
I'm
out.
really concerned with is schools. 'cause that's what I'm
Right,
talking
yeah, so shrink swell soils exists like predominantly in the city, but it's a separate topic, like related specifically to flooding.
Because we talked about the structural assessment, $5,500,000.
That's right.
Then you got the sidewalk repair, which is in the kind of the same vein.
Two different contracts.
$400,000. And I think you had a third one, flooring replacement,
Mhm.
another $3 million.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, how do we, are these lowest bids that we have or something?
Well, as I stated from the outset, that would be the maximum projected amount I would expect to receive as far as a bid goes. So again, these are kind of exploratory numbers into preparing ourselves for, the maximum budget that we could expect to see built around these items. What I would expect is for the bids to come in quite a bit lower. But I would not be surprised with the current labor market and the way skilled contractors are exiting the market entirely. The ones that are left don't have a lot of competition. For instance, for our bathroom renovation project, we had 2 bidders. 4 years ago, I would have told you we would have at least 10. I've not seen anything like this before. We're dealing with another unprecedented issue because of that, because of the pandemic. So I would say, keeping that in mind, trying to move forward with getting bids, I think we should be prepared to see things that are slightly irregular.
Also, one of the things you pointed out in the first bathroom, I like the bathrooms in the modules a lot better than what you showed here. You didn't even have, I think, separate urinals in the boys' room and here. You just had the petitioned regular commode, I think. I didn't see a urinal in there for the boys. And you mentioned touchless, but actually the only thing touchless is actually the water. They still have to get the soap and be exposed to germs. And I even have a touchless soap dispenser at home. And they still have to touch the paper towels instead of having touchless air dryers. So I don't think it's no way we can say everything's touchless, we've gone touchless because we only did one thing, and that was the faucets. And why is that?
The bathrooms as well. The rest.
And also, we still got the same old get your dirty hands on water fountains in the hallway. I was standing there, which I would have thought it would have been more sanitary if we had water fountains that you could step on or something to get the water to come out. Well, we have the same ones that deemed ones, they're not necessarily sanitary. One kid touches it to get water, and he has COVID. The next kid comes behind him, he's in contact with the same thing. So I don't know what kind of thought, or whether it was monetary restrictions that allowed you to leave the antiquated equipment or reinstall new, not sanitary equipment.
Well, currently, all the accessories, the peripherals that you're speaking to, such as paper towels, things like that. A lot of that goes back to supply chain shortages right now. It's very difficult to get touchless paper towel dispensers, for instance.
Like air blowers?
Air dryers, we do not have the electrical capabilities to be able to put those in. The touchless systems that we went with, they're battery powered. They're powered by battery packs. We just simply do not have the electrical grid, as I touched on a little bit about modernizing our electrical grids especially. Yeah, so that's the main problem there. And you can't find battery operated units for a lot of that touchless stuff for anything but the toilets and the sinks. So we went as touch-free, hands-free as we could, circumstances given.
Listening to the presentation now that we're on, and the question that Councilman Smith raised, because I know this school, I know when it was built, and I was a student there as well. So basically, question to the city council as well as school division, school board, are we economically, is it good to keep putting money into old buildings or develop a new one where all of the students, each grade level can be on the same lot but separated? This is a city with 8,000 some people, 8,200, something like that. So basically, if you project it for the next 20 or 30 years, it's not going to increase that much, maybe 10, 20% down the line. But if we build a building to cover all of the 3 schools, into one, economically, that we may come out better than just throwing money away on old stuff.
And I agree completely with combining some of it. I don't know that all three from an educational standpoint would work in one facility. I definitely think there's some possibility of looking at what is our middle and high now because of the instructional base. I think definitely the middle and high school, you could really seriously look at that being in one complex. And then that would eliminate one building, you're down to two.
Right.
I think that is something worth consideration. Because you got the way that education of those students in that elementary work, it's a little bit different than at that middle high school level.
Correct.
I think that is definitely a viable option on the table, and I agree with you. Is it really smart to be throwing money at three buildings that are constantly going to need maintenance versus looking at something that's newer, that you've got some warranty on and you've got some longevity with, and not have to be throwing money constantly at that big project maintenance anymore.
I can definitely say that the ideas coming out of wards 2 and 4, that I do agree with that. Based off of the capital needs assessment that has been performed, that we've carefully and painstakingly figured out what needs to happen to these facilities, it may be beneficial to start having that discussion. And if we decide to have that discussion, I will be very happy to be a part.
It seems like we had this discussion last year.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the first
And
time.
the year before that.
But, yeah, we do a lot of talking, but where's the action?
And I would expect the school board to come before council with a plan for a preliminary sketch of this is what we looked into, these are the costs, this is what it'll accommodate. You know, the city, we can talk about it, but unless you give us something, a plan, we can't begin to consider funding it. And we need to take in consideration funds that we're gonna throw at this that we may need to go toward that new school. Because we still gotta operate until that new school is built.
That's correct.
So I would ask that the school board, or the school system, the division somehow begins to put together a plan to bring before us instead of just letting it go on to year and we talk about the same thing.
Well, if I may, I'm Bobby Cutchins, Ward 6. We did have this discussion last year. We were coming in here tonight. I was kind of hoping we were going to hear some suggestions from last year's meeting. But we received these briefly before we had the meeting tonight, so we've not even had time to see these reports. So we didn't know what to expect tonight. It's a common sense approach. You have a business school is a business. Okay? The students and their families are your customers. They come in, your business is declining. How can you continue to throw money at something that's declining? I'm not going to say failing, because the teachers here are doing everything they can do, and very much appreciated. The shortage of teachers is no different than what the whole country is going through today on having a workforce. We're all struggling. We have businesses in Franklin that cannot pay their employees what Suffolk can pay somebody. We deal with it. We hit it head on. We reduce costs where we can within our facility to make it work. The school has to do the same thing. And it's not going to happen overnight. But Mr. Smith brought this up last year about the schools. Nothing else has been talked about, not to us. And we're back here talking about it again tonight, a year later. My point is, it's time to take action and prepare for the future for these children and the teachers that work here. So it's up to the school board to come up with a plan to bring to us. That's my opinion. And I'll leave it right there.
I will say, we've been asking for a capital improvement plan for how many years?
Almost every.
This is the first time we get some hard evidence about why we maybe need to be moving. And, you know, we've been asking for it, and I applaud you for having it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Because it does solidify at least the fact that we need to be investigating things in a different light. Now, I realize this is on the high side, but at $34 million, we'd be, number one, we're gonna have to borrow money to go out and get it. We don't have 34 million just sitting around.
2/3 of the annual operating budget for the city.
Yeah, exactly. We just don't have it. But it's not to say that we don't need to start looking at it and start planning for it. But based on this, for the first time, we can see why where the pain is. But we've been asking to define the pain. I know for the last 4 years, and we finally got it.
Well, sir, if they had hired me 4 years ago.
But it does make a difference. So thank you for doing it. We applaud you for having a capital improvement plan. Thank you for putting it out here. And I know it's pie in the sky. I used to do capital improvement plans. I know where they are, but that's fine. But it gives us some basis to work.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. T, I do have one question.
Okay.
And I'll kind of direct this at council too. Given this proposal and what we're looking at dollar-wise for capital improvements, and what I'm hearing from council, is council saying that they would like some type of cost estimate of what it would cost for a new school building in comparison to what is included in this capital improvement plan?
I would think the answer to that is yes, but I think it's also, to your point, I think it's a whole organizational review and saying, how do we, with a declining enrollment that we've had, okay? And let's hope that they pick back up at some point in time. But based on the census we just completed and everything else, we've got a declining population as well as a declining enrollment. And we're losing 50, 60, 80 kids a year, which we have, if you look at it over the last, four, then we need to be looking at a smarter way for us to do things. And, you know, we appoint the school board to do those things. So it's y'all's responsibility, as I see, to come with, as everybody has said, to come not only with a fiscal plan, but also a plan on how you want to approach education and how we want to house students and what we want to provide for students as we move forward. So it's not just come up with a building, it's come up with the ancillary support pieces of those buildings and what you need and how you want to pursue. Does that answer your question?
I believe that approaching new school eliminates the amount of miles the school bus travel. There are so many things to improve the education system. And maybe that's why we're losing teachers. Every facility in Suffolk is a brand new school.
Correct.
Now, I don't know,
Suffolk has 80,000 tax people.
True
That makes a difference.
We got a lot more industries paying taxes than we have.
And we're beginning to do it, but we've got to find a way to have diverse sources of revenue, not just revenue coming from real estate taxes for the people that live here. We put it on their shoulders too many years, for too long. And we've got to find a way. We have an opportunity now with what we've got going on with Global Concentrate coming in. We've got some other businesses coming in, but that's going to be a drop in the bucket to $34 million. You said it. So we've got to come up with creative financing. We've got an $8 million bogey or so on the courthouse.
Yes.
You know, we gotta come up with that in the next 12 months. You know, those of you who live in the area, that's part of what you gotta help us come up with. We gotta borrow the money to do it. We don't have that sitting around either. So, you know, that's the reality of it. And I think to Bobby's point, you know, we cut our budget last year by what, almost 20%. But yet we cut because we were anticipating what was going to be happening with COVID and with the pandemic. Because of the local people supporting our local businesses and doing things, year over year, we had a better year than we had in 19. But that was because of local people staying in the area, supporting what we had to offer. But by the same token, we're better off financially because we did that. But we still can't save $8 million in a year. So, but anyway, that's enough of the history. You don't need to know a whole lot of that, other than the fact that I think we're on to something. Let's move off of talking about it. We may still continue to talk about it, but let's start really concentrating, good, engaged conversation. Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Teague.
thank you, everyone.
The last presentation is very short. I promise it won't be more than 3 or 4 minutes because this is the presentation I gave at the July board meeting where our Board of Education approved the ESSER 3 funding. I only changed 2 things, the dollar amount, because at the last minute, the Virginia Department of Education gave us a slightly higher figure. So back then it was 5,732,000. It's now 5,736,000. And then on the next slide, item 7 is when they actually approved this grant. So, so this is now approved. We've actually made expenditures out of it and we've submitted for reimbursements. Tammy, if you could just skip to slide 6. This is the ESSER 3 breakdown of how we intend to spend this money. This is the content basically of your Monday night meeting when you have your public hearing. This is the slide that really everybody should be looking at. We went through the prior 2 slides and those are the allowable uses. You can't just spend this on anything. They have very, strict rules and things that you can spend this money on. And this is the, out of numerous meetings, this is the final list that we came up with. Now, bear in mind, we are required to elicit public comment every 6 months. The Department of Education wants meaningful conversation with our stakeholders to come into us, and this could change based on, if we get a lot of public comments saying, 1 or 2 of these things, they shouldn't be, we don't want you spending the money on that. Maybe you should, do this. And then we, go back and forth with that. So, but this is the plan that has been approved by the Department of Education. And the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, 6 items, those are the big capital expenditures that's the float that we need. So we as the school division have to be very careful when we spend that money. And to one of the council members' point, the bottom three items, refurbishing the bathrooms at JP King, bathrooms at the high school, and remove and replace all the drinking fountains in all the schools. This grant does that. So this is available. Actually, this is on our website. This grant has its own webpage. On our website, there's an ESSER 3 webpage specifically for this grant. So that is the presentation of the ESSER 3 funding grant. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a point of order about this. How do we want to proceed with this? Do you want city council to present this and open this session, or does somebody from the school board or somebody from the school want to tee this thing up public hearing.
I would be more than happy to, I'm planning to be there anyways, so I will be more than happy to come up and speak to it, to open everything up.
Well, you know how we typically tee them up by, you know, kind of giving an overview of what we're doing and why.
Correct.
I think if it's coming, you know, it's the school's funds and it's the way the school has allocated, the way they want to spend it, I think it would make it much more believable and much richer, if you would, if y'all do that.
No,
if you
I
don't
have
mind.
no problem doing that at all. I do not mind.
Okay,
I will be there unless there's a major emergency in my household.
I understand.
I plan to be there anyways. So, and that was one of my reasons of being there, was in case I needed to speak on behalf of that. So that's not a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have anything else from the city council for the good of the order? If not,
Anyone have anything from the school division? I will say, and I know we're beating a dead horse, but I'm sure everyone is aware that, just to make council aware that the theater troupe went to states this past weekend, and competed and came in first runner-up in the states for theater. Amazing director and Wrangler is here tonight, Terry Zerflu, and they will be doing a special encore performance of that Saturday night.
Yeah, so just wanted to thank everybody for coming here tonight. It's kind of nice for me to get to come back into the school system and hear the machinations, so thank you for your service. We are very proud to do a one-night-only performance of the show that did place second in the state for our class grouping. So the new Margot will be opening and closing on the same night, this Saturday, December 11th at 7 o'clock at Franklin High School. I will tell you that we've gotten to be quite sticklers. We've been through 3 levels of competition where the door closes before performance and no one comes in. So we're trying to train our parents, our community. So please come early. The doors will open at 6:30. It is a 35-minute show. So if you have plans on Saturday, we won't take all night. We'll be out by 8. But I want to thank in this forum, I want to thank the school board, who has been very generous and very supportive of our program, with both financially and in person. I'd like to thank Travis Felt and his staff. They were traveling with us when we began to travel, which was just this last weekend to Charlottesville, which is enemy territory for Mr. Felt. But he was there. He was going to multiple places, bouncing all over the state to support both our wrestlers and our thespians. So I just want to thank the school for supporting not only athletics, but this is part of Virginia High School League, just like a sport. And we're really proud that we are doing as well. And for those of you who didn't read the article, or it may have not been teased out, and Stephen, thank you for doing beautiful work on our social media, and Tammy and everybody who was helping. I got it from the horse's mouth, Mr. Ken Raybuck, who those of you who've been around know that Ken was the father of Franklin High School Theater for many years, and confirmed that the last time Franklin High School went to state competition, not necessarily placed, but went to state competition was in 1995-96. So this is truly historic. We're really proud to be part of it. It's lightning in a bottle. Please come Saturday night, $7. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to point out the banner that's back here actually is from our staff, and it's a thank you to both the city and the school board for everything that we are doing to support our teachers. So I wanted to be sure that I pointed that out. And one other thing that I did want council to be aware of, Virginia School Board Associations a couple weeks ago, had their annual convention in Williamsburg. And they recognized 2 school board members in the state as school board members of the year. One of those 2 was Bob Holt. Wanted to just let everyone know that while we were here, and I think that's all that I have. Anyone from the school board have anything?
Yeah, you forgot something.
What was that?
At that same convention, they recognized 5 school boards out of 132 as master school boards, and Franklin was one of the 5.
Anything else? I think that is all from us.
Okay, well, I don't think council has anything else to say, so I will adjourn the Franklin City Council portion of this meeting.
All right, and I will say thank you to everyone that was in attendance tonight for showing up. We have staff, of course, that had a long day and they are here as well, so thank you. Thank you to city council as well for meeting with us.
Also, help yourself to some cookies on the bookshelf.
Oh,
right here
yes.
behind you.
Gotcha.
Yes,
And
Miss
I'm-
Page bought cookies and I think I forgot to give them out. So please eat the cookies over there.
And I will adjourn the meeting to the school.